let me ask you a question. When you're thinking about hiring an individual, are you looking to hire someone who's already experienced and sort of perfect? Or are you willing to take a chance on someone who's raw but has that hunger and that drive? Well, that's a conversation I had today with Erikka Tiffani. She is a general sales manager at an Audi dealership in Georgia. She is also one of the co-founders of WOCAN, Women of Color Automotive Network. And she had just been highlighted as a 40 under 40, top 40 people in automotive under 40 years of age by Automotive News. Now, her question was, when she was a single mother with a GED, would you have hired her, or are you looking for the Erikka she is today? And what that journey was like, and why a lot of dealerships and businesses in general are missing the boat on these types of individuals because they're hiring for perfection, not for potential. So truly can't wait to dive into this episode. She is one of the most passionate people I've run across in a long time. I think you're going to love not only her story, but what she does in terms of how she develops her team, coaches her team, and really is laying groundwork for the next generation behind her, as well as really breaking down barriers ahead of her. So let's dive into today's episode with Erikka Tiffani. Okay, so Erikka, let's just jump right in. First, pleasure to meet you. I'm so happy we finally got connected and got you on the podcast. And I was really fascinated about chatting with you about your career. It's way more extensive than I understood when I did research. So take me back. Why auto? Why, out of all the different things that you could have done over the years, why auto in the beginning?
I didn't choose auto. It definitely was a moment of clarity where I found that I was helped by someone in auto, and I
Okay.
enjoyed that feeling. It was a moment where I was, young. I had my young daughter. I was a single mom. My car was needed repairs. And someone gave me that olive branch to say, hey, listen, I know you're struggling through this. Let me figure out a way that I could help you. And that feeling of connection, especially when you're feeling weak and you're feeling like you don't know where to turn, especially on such a big part of your life, like transportation is huge.
Right.
To be able to get you back and forth, take care of the children. I mean, just being able to have reliable transportation is a huge part of your life. And without that part, everything else can go away. So when I saw that changing my transportation could actually put me on a path to change the rest of my life, I said, you know what, I'm in. How can I help other people who may be in that similar situation, who just need someone else to kind of give them that reach out?
Well, that's a great place, and I pause occasionally because I don't want the listeners to miss certain things. But do you think that's a huge point that you just touched on? Understanding how big transportation is in lives. I think a lot of times when I go work with dealers as my marketing agency or go in and consult, everyone's focused on we have to sell cars versus really understanding how this vehicle is important and really finding the right one, or fixing someone's vehicle, how important that is. We take for granted, oh, loaner cars, we can't, but how is that person supposed to get to work if we're holding on to their vehicles for a few days? Do you think that understanding of you starting out in that position has really helped you connect with your customers?
Absolutely, because I don't look at it as just selling cars, but solving problems. Every single day I'm at work to solve a problem for someone, whether it's in sales, whether it's in service, whether it's a client dealing with a recall, whatever it is,
Right.
they have a problem and a need that needs to be met. And when you understand it from that point of view, you have a different value there. I feel like a lot of times dealers have been disconnected from the automotive process because they are driving in demos. If they want to buy a car from a different dealer, they call up their buddy.
Right.
He gets them a hookup. They know the manufacturer plugs. That's not the reality of what most people deal with. It's frustrating. It's painful. Not being able to have transportation can totally, change your entire trajectory of your life. It can disrupt everything that you have. So knowing that we're in a position to solve a problem, and when I wake up every day knowing that every customer I deal with, every employee I deal with ends up ending that same result, that someone's life is just a little bit better than it was yesterday, gives me joy and passion, and it gives me a sense of purpose. So I don't look at it as just the transaction, because I have relationships with customers that I've dealt with years ago who still feel like I'm a friend and a family member and someone they can connect to because I was a part of that huge decision that they made.
Wow, that's great. And I think, we have a lot of listeners who may not be in the automotive space, but for what you're saying is, I think everyone in any business has to look at their customers. They're coming to you for a reason. Usually it is maybe it's not a problem similar to, well, my car is broken and I need that, or I need a new vehicle, but someone who's coming to you to say, I need to host a wedding. I need to go find school clothes for my children, and you need help trying to figure out, or I need someone to help me with a new strategy or a consultant. I mean, all of that is solving problems. And I think we get into a very transactional space and forget to take a step back and reverse roles and say, well,
Right.
how do I feel as a consumer when I receive phenomenal experience versus feeling that I'm just a number and I'm transacted. So to that point, we seem to be, and maybe you've noticed this, you've been in the industry in this type of customer facing uh, business for a long time. It seems like there's a resurgence now talking about customer experience. Before it was just sales, sales, sales. I'm not sure if it's because consumers are just, they're looking at vehicles or getting my car service as transactional. So whoever's going to make it easier, faster, and a better experience, um, I'm going to go there. So to that point, do you think that experience is becoming more important to the industry?
I do think that experience is, because one, it's quicker to share a bad experience and that permeates a lot longer than it used to, right?
Right.
Just like a good experience. The reputation of your dealership goes so much further when someone can send a tweet or post a message. That experience lives out. And companies and organizations are more protective of the damage control that can happen from a bad experience that goes the wrong way. At the same time, as everything becomes easier and faster for people, they want the things that are important to them in their life to have that same type of feel. Who would have
Right.
thought, years ago, when you look at Uber and you look at Lyft, these companies and organizations that were bred out of being able to make a process seamless for someone, the checkout at the grocery store. Someone can deliver groceries to your home now. Obviously, we know the big companies like Amazon who just make getting something easy. So
Right.
as you continue to have young people or younger generations grow up in this, their expectation of that is like this, everything that I've ever
Yes.
asked for can come to me in a moment. So that experience is what I remember even longer than the product that I've enjoyed, right? I enjoy the experience more than the actual after result of whatever I bought or purchased.
Yeah, I agree. I came from hospitality for years, and one of my mentors always said that is that we have to replicate the experience because, I worked in New York City. A steak is a steak is a steak. You can find steak a million places. So, and this is a good topic to sort of twist over to because you have children, different ages, but I have a 16 and a 14-year-old, and to your point, this new generation, whatever label now, I think they're Generation Z or whatever. And I think your younger ones are Generation Alpha. And my kids are like, that's a cooler one than Z. But they've never been without smartphones.
Right.
That sense of speed, or I can get any question answered through this device, and Amazon fast or DoorDash fast. So I think we all have to embrace this idea of how can we make whatever we're doing faster and easier. And so I still don't think people, this whole debate about buying cars online, I don't think there's a mass group of people that are all right today. But over time, they're just going to want it faster and they want it easier. I mean, are you seeing that from your customers as well, or just being around? Because now you're very well respected. We'll get into some of your other accomplishments, but people are starting to pick your brain about a lot of these things. What are you seeing in terms of what customers, where that pivot's going for customers?
Well, it's interesting to me because I believe the pandemic opened up a lot of doors and opportunity for people to see things differently. If you think about the
Right.
typical restaurant experience right now, right, you can now have it delivered to your home. You can go in there and pick it up. You can have it walked out to your car. You can have a paper menu, a digital menu, a
Hmm.
plastic menu that's been sanitized. I mean, now just going into a restaurant has several different avenues for the experience. The
Right.
same thing with Whole Foods Market. Do you want us to put your food in a locker and save it for when you want it picked up on your own time? So each organization that was able to adapt with that situation and then create an experience that said it's not a one size fit all. And I think that's sometimes the problem is that we feel like everything's supposed to fit in this box, like how I like it. But how I like it and how Glenn likes it is completely different. And what my 14-year-old son wants and my 2-year-old daughter wants are completely different. So when we
Right.
go out as a family to be able to have an experience where my daughter says, bring me something home, my husband says he wants his to go, but I can sit and enjoy the restaurant because that's the experience I desire, has now become a reality. And whether it's automotive or any other industry, we must understand that our customers all start in this huge funnel, and that funnel in the bottom is not as tight as it used to be, right? They're going through different siphons, more kind of like a strainer, more than just a funnel, because there's an end result, but how they
Right.
get there is different. And we must make sure that we're creating resources and opportunities within our companies to make sure that all of those pathways lead to the same place, but even if someone takes a different journey.
No, that's spot on. And that's what I say. One of my struggles right now with automotive is everybody wants to put it into one box. The words digital retailing, here's that box, and we want this
Right.
box versus saying, where does the customer want? I think the pandemic, that whole shutdown, depending on where you were, here in New Jersey, we were closed down. So in order to sell, you had to come up and strategize and come up with a different process. Well,
Right.
my challenge to those who bought cars, to your point, 3 years from now, when they turn that lease in, 4 years or 5 years, when they turn their car back in or design, they're going to want something better along the same lines. They don't want to go backwards. And that is a fear of going back to what was comfortable for you as owner, as employee, versus saying, well, what does the customer really want? And I think we're in this growth phase, and we could learn a lot from restaurants or retail where someone brought it out to you, someone made it easy. You could communicate through technology with people rapidly to get my questions answered. And then here it is in a nice bow. And maybe you can get a car dropped off in your driveway, or someone will pick up your car. And maybe that's not everybody, but I think the days of buying a car or interacting with a dealership taking all day, those are long gone. And if you're not paying attention to that, I think you're going to lose out.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's some places and dealerships that have likened this opportunity and saying, look, it's kind of self-focused. Hey,
Mhm.
more money for us. It's a great time for us. We're going to ride the wave. But here's the deal: when the wave is over, right, and the tide has gone down, and your dealership hasn't adapted and created an opportunity for the customer who now has options, right? Inventory's
Yes.
back where it needs to be. Now they have options. What's the reputation that you left? Because if their
Mm,
experience you with right now is, oh well, we don't have inventory, so you if you don't like our price, you can go somewhere else, right? And they're branded in their mind that mindset that, oh, well, how did you treat me when inventory was bad? How did you treat me when resources were low? Because
right.
when the grocery store didn't have toilet paper, or Costco, what did they do? They rationed, right? They said, hey, listen,
Yep.
2 per customer. They made you have a good customer experience. They put it out in email. They gave everybody the information up front. Here's what we're going to do to protect you, because we want everyone to have it fair and equally. We're not going to let someone come in and load up on, 50 cases. So how does that turn into automotive or any parts of retail? What type of experience are you delivering now when times are good for the dealer and tougher for the consumer, so that
Right.
when later on they remember and say, no matter what, even if I couldn't buy a car from you that day, I'd come back to you because the experience was great. Because you didn't have the inventory, but you put me on a waiting list. Because you told me about a car that's
Mhm.
coming in on invoice and said, hey, listen, this one's coming soon. I'm going to let you know when it gets here. Because those things are what creates uh, that funnel of customers who you don't have to pay the marketing for anymore because they're repeat, right? You can't
Right.
put a cost on that repeat referral reputation. That is bigger than any kind of digital conversion cost per measurement that you could ever have, is how a customer feels and that information they share with others. That's priceless.
Well, what you had said earlier, you have customers that have been with you for a long time. You know, I've shared the story multiple times. You know, when we were growing up, my father had someone he bought cars from, and when they worked at the Ford dealership, we drove Fords. And when they moved over to Pontiac or Oldsmobile, guess what we drove? Because that was their trusted person. And I think I think we've lost some of that, either because people think that automotive is transitory industry. So I'm going to sell you a car today. I may not be here in 3 years, where before that was a career.
Sure.
So on that point about a career, because when I taught up at Northwood University, I teach in their automotive digital marketing. They have a program where you can get a degree in, marketing and management for automotive. A lot of them didn't think there were careers, because the thought is, when I think of automotive, I think of just sales.
Right.
But when I look at your career, I mean, you did a variety of things, from finance to you built, teams of BDC or business development centers and things of that nature. So there was a lot of different skill sets and things that you've done over your career that would serve anyone well in terms of building up your skills. So what would you say if you were sitting here, and we probably have some of those students sitting here, and they would say, well, what can I get out of automotive? If I go into the automotive industry, what do I get out of it? What could I get out of it? What would you reply to that?
One of the benefits I found of automotive is the amount of people that I touch, right? It goes back to that currency and the relationships that are built from all different industries. I've sold a car to someone who's just, a friendly grandma in the neighborhood, to Arthur Blank, who, founded Home Depot. And in the middle of all these people are these different relationships that are built, and different conversations that are had, where I find out where people have traveled, and the businesses that they've started, and their kids are in school, or they've suffered from a loss. And that capital of relationships is almost it's like currency within you, because you're a sum of the people that you've been around. The ability to have a conversation with someone from all walks of life, right? If you're just limited to your circle and the people around you, whether that's at school or your family or your community, then you're kind of limited to what you see the world. But when
Right.
you've talked to someone and they said, oh, I just left a business trip and I came back from China, and you're going, whoa, wow, from China? Tell me more about it. Or you're talking about an entrepreneur who sold his life savings to start his company. And you find out that you're meeting people from all walks of life who share one common interest, right? Is that they need a car. They all come, no matter how big money or small money, education level, gender, it doesn't matter. They're all coming in for this same resource, which is, I need transportation in this moment. So it kind of links us all together. Um, the I didn't get to go to school. I was a high school dropout. I got my GED. I had my daughter young, and I beat myself up a lot about that, because I would meet people and they'd say, well, what school did you go to? And I'd feel embarrassed, right? Because I didn't have that scholar to say. But I said, you know what? I'm going to be a student of life, and I'm going to work harder than anyone that's around me. Because it's interesting to me that even though I didn't go to college, that people will pay thousands of dollars to go to school to learn an education, and that someone has to teach them how to do something. And yet when you're working for someone and I say, hey, listen, I know you're doing this job, but I want to teach you this job, they say, well, you don't pay me to do that. Well, that's not my job. I don't know,
Right.
until you pay me, I'm not going to do that position. Well, how can you learn that position if you don't let someone teach you? So
Right.
you could literally be in your position, learn the next position above you while you're in yours, while you're getting paid to do it. So it's almost like a free education when you're always challenging yourself to say, you know what, whoever my boss is, I want to learn his job, even when I'm not getting paid to learn his job. Because guess what happened? When the opportunity opened and that person was promoted or let go or transitioned somewhere else, I now had the skill set and the confidence to apply for that job or be considered, because they said, well, you know what? Doesn't Erikka know how to do that? Doesn't she know how to order
Right.
cars? Even though that's not my paid position, I put myself in a position to be prepared for when that position became available. And I gave my own inner confidence a boost, because now there's something I know that I didn't know before. And it didn't cost me a thing but time.
Okay, so now I'm going to make you put on your manager hat, because part of the reason why I built this channel was because there's a lot of people out there that get thrown into positions of leadership. And as you know, especially in this industry, restaurant industry, a lot of industries, you're thrown in and you got to do exactly what you just said, figure it all out on your own. Now that someone's going to be listening to this and they're going to say, well, Erikka, you're different than me, meaning that you're just in that top 20%. I don't care what industry I drop you in. That's just your nature. So The problem is we don't have hundreds of yous. We have a lot of other people who, to your point, is I just want to come in and do my job, do it really well, tell me what to do and I'll do it. So where do we get it wrong in automotive? Why isn't there more training where why do we always depend on everybody to do that versus building a path for them to say, here's your next step, I'm going to help you, to help those people that are not as motivated or driven as you to accomplish the next step and the next step and the next step?
Sales has always been one of the few unique career paths where it's about yourself, right? That's
Mhm.
what they tell you. You get into sales because you can make as much money as you want. There's not a ceiling. It's all about you. It's never been about team. This isn't football, right? This isn't sports. This isn't a team sport per se. Sure, we have a goal to meet as a dealership, but it's every person's individual goal that gets them to that point.
Right.
And so I think as managers and trainers, we don't really learn how to cultivate. We don't think about putting people in our BDC and say, that's my bench. I know I've got to build a team. My son's getting ready to go to high school, right? So he's in 8th grade going to high school football camp to learn about it so that he's ready when he gets there. So when
Right.
I start my receptionist, I say, listen, I'm bringing you in as a receptionist, but the BDC is your next step. We need to career path people from the very beginning
Oh,
and
yeah.
find out and listen to their goals. And we need to be able to talk to them and hear the objection and say, well, why wouldn't you sell cars? Well, I don't want to work on the weekends, or I'm scared of the commission. Well, what if I put you on a non-commission? What if I gave you a salary to start and
Mhm.
showed you different pay plan options? You know, again, giving people options to say, this is where you are, but this is not going to be, I refuse to let you stay in this position, you know, for that long. I had a receptionist for 5 years. They said, well, she likes as a receptionist. I said, are you sure? Have you talked to her? Did you
Right.
ask her, does she like it as a receptionist? Or does she come in and do her job because she doesn't see anything else? She doesn't
Right.
see herself in sales. She doesn't see herself in BDC. She doesn't have the skills for the accounting office. So you know what she does? She comes in and she knits and she reads a book and she plays on her phone because that's all she knows. But when
Right.
you career path her and you say, listen, this is a starting position and we don't even let people stay in this position more than a year or 2 years, right? Here's what's next. You tell me what you want to do next, and I'm going to slowly build a 1 day a week where you're going to go in and train at another position till you find something you love. That's how you build loyal employees for life, right? By listening and understanding what's important to them. We had salespeople who off on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we had one salesperson we just hired, and he said, I need to be off on Wednesday. And we said, no, you're off either on Tuesdays and Thursdays because that's what we've always done. And he came to me privately and said, I don't think I'll be able to take the position. And I said, why? He said, well, I have a young daughter and I need to be off on Wednesday because, and I said to my team, I said, well, what's the problem with him being off on Wednesday?
Right.
What is it? Like, well, we've always done it that way, but why? We don't ask ourselves the why. It reminds me of a story about a grandmother who used to cut the arms and legs off the chicken when she baked it. And so generationally, everybody used to do that. And so finally, one day, the great granddaughter said, why do we cut the arms and legs off the chicken and put it in a different pot? Well, that's why grandma and great grandma and everybody did it. So she went all the way to her 90-year-old grandma and said, great grandma, why do we cut the arms and legs off the chicken when we cook it? And she said, because baby, back in my day, there wasn't a pot that was big enough for the chicken to fit in their hole. So here it is. We've taken a tradition and continue to do it when it no longer makes sense for the times.
Right.
We
Right. Right.
now
Right.
have a pot big enough, and yet we're still doing things the old way. My last dealership decided they were going to write everybody up because they didn't get to 15 cars. And I said, aren't we in the middle of an inventory crisis? With 18 salespeople, there's no way even half of them could have sold 15 cars because we don't have enough inventory.
Right.
And they're making some of the best money in their career, and yet you're going to write them up because that's what we do. When you don't hit your goal, we write you up. And that's where management and leadership are different. That's where being a boss and being a leader are different. And I try myself every day that I don't want to be somebody's boss. Don't even call me boss, right?
Right.
I don't want to just be your manager. I want to be someone to inspire you and to uplift you, and that it is personal. It's not just business. We're not just, we're friends, and that's okay. And I think
Right.
we have to get to a place where we're okay being friends.
No, I think, listen, you're preaching to the choir here because I love the word coach because coaches
Great word.
inspire, coaches develop. There's a reason why I always say there's a reason why it's called training and development, not just training. We keep forgetting this other thing, which is a
Development.
little long term. But to your point is, and this is the duality of a lot of businesses, and especially in automotive, we can't retain people. That's what we hear. Can't find good people, can't retain people. but yet I don't have a career plan because, well, what if they leave? Again, it's the old joke. Well, if I train Erikka and she leaves, yeah, but what if I don't train her and she stays, right? So you go down these roads. And I think, to your point, I think, why wouldn't you want to train people internally? They know your culture, build up from inside. My team, when we have a new position open, the first thing we say is, can we solve this internally? Right? Does someone internally have the skills? They may not have the skills today. And then we say, well, great, we're going to bring someone in, but we're going to still keep them on that path to be able to push them and say, where do you want to go? Now, there are some people who have been with me for a long time who say, I, I want to do this versus that. I'm like, great, let's get as much as we can from you where you're happy versus putting you in a position that is not comfortable for you. But,
Yeah.
I love hearing that because it is needed, of this idea of development and what's the next step. And I had a gentleman on a few weeks ago who's written books. He's, written books on Generation Z. And he said that the folks who are coming out of college right now and in their early 20s and down to whatever the age group is, they all want to know, what's my next path? Now, when we were hired, I was hired, you're much younger than me, but when you came in, you were just happy to have that job and you did your job really well. And you just put your head down and hoped that someone would say, hey, would you like to do something else? So we all waited, where
Right.
now people are coming in and going, wait a minute, I've watched my parents. I've heard stories of, not getting something, getting passed over. And they're going, I just want a career path. So what's so bad about that? I agree with you. If you bring in someone entry level, they should know you're doing this for a year. Don't get ahead of yourself. I'll help you, but this is a year. Then you can move to here. Then you can move to there. And then you can move to there. Now,
Right.
whether you want to go that far, that's one thing, but I should at least know and have the option. And I, as a coach, should be pushing you until I say, you know what, maybe we're pushing you down the wrong job, but I have another job in this department. You want to go over there and maybe you're more successful. I love what you're saying. I wish more people felt that way or delivered on that. I think there's a lot of people who feel that way, but then don't know how to implement it or change it.
Yes, even more so, the people that do stay a lot of times are underappreciated. They've been with
Mhm.
the company 10, 15, 20 years. I was talking to someone the other day and they were like, I've been with this company 22 years. And I was blown away. I had no idea that they had been working for the company that
Right.
long. And when they started to tell their story, I saw this spark in them that came out of nowhere where they were like, yeah, I started out in this position and, it was back when we didn't even have this building and none of this stuff was here. And then I went to this position and went to this position. And then they kind of plateaued to a point where there's nothing else that they see further. And the
Right.
company, while they appreciate them, sometimes does not go back and recognizes, the tenure that person has put in. And then it's such a blow and such a surprise when they say, you know what, I'm leaving, or they have health issues because they're unhappy. And you're wondering, what did I miss? Where did I go wrong? How did I not see this coming?
Well, you
And it's
didn't leverage, to your point. You didn't leverage. You didn't come to them and say, listen, let's say you're in the accounting department. Let's get away from sales. You're in the back, the accounting
Yep,
department, and you've maxed out. Like, you're the top, you're running the department. Well, what else could we do? Is that person at the leadership table when you're talking about the dealership, when you're making decisions, that department?
absolutely.
Or could you have them speak to your new hire class of employees, whatever business it is, to say, I've been here for 20 years. You made the right decision to stay here.
Absolutely.
Are you using that person? We rush all the time to get testimonials about what it was like to buy a car, service a car here. But yet, why wouldn't you use those people to create testimonials to go
Mm,
market to people looking for a job? To say,
absolutely.
I've been here, I moved up, I did the career path, look at what I'm doing. This is a phenomenal place. Why don't we have that type of? So, to your point, there's a lot of ways that we can celebrate them or use their skill sets in other ways. I will guarantee you those people would love to talk to the new hire class and have
Absolutely.
15, and they feel appreciated for their service. They feel valued as a vital part of the organization. I think those are things that, to your point, we miss because, as I said, we sometimes fall into, and like I said, I've worked in a lot of different industries, and we all fall into very transactional and focus on the transactions versus celebrating someone who's been there for a while, celebrating, maximizing them, utilizing them in other ways that maybe aren't as clear. But when you stop for a moment and think about it, boy, you have a lot of resources at your fingertips.
And to your point, Glenn, I remember it used to be that you got the watch, that was kind of the
Yeah.
epitome when you got the watch, right? And now that those days are kind of gone, the people that are looking to see what 10 or 15 years look like ahead of them, is it somewhere they want to be?
Right.
And if you can't see yourself and say, where do I see a future for myself here? Do I want to be where Larry is, where he is right now, 20 years in? He's not happy. He just kind of comes into work, does his
Right.
thing. No one mentions him. No one knows what's going on in his life. And if I don't see a future there, then again, that's how you get those people that leave and you're surprised going, but I thought, why aren't you being loyal? I thought we had a place for you. And it's just because they couldn't see themselves.
Or what they see to your, I think the other piece is they see that Larry and they go, I don't want to do that. I mean, I think there's a lot of generations who saw their parents coming home and complaining and not feeling appreciated or
Yep.
passed over, or there was a time where someone who got to that almost to getting the watch, you know what I'm saying, 4 or 5
Right.
years before the watch, and they're the ones who get downsized because it's more cost effective to hire somebody younger. I do a lot of volunteer work to talk to people who are in job transition, and that's a big frustration where they feel that, I'm in my 50s and I got the boot because it's cheaper to go get somebody out of college.
Mm.
Um, and so they're going, there's no loyalty left anymore because it is all dollars and cents and it is all very cutthroat, where I think people want to find companies that they can believe in and stay in and see that I'm going to be taken care of and I am going to be challenged and I am going to be someone's going to support me and they're here. And I think that's
Culture.
not marketed enough
Right.
to any employee. Forget young. There's people who are in their 30s who are looking for a new place to go work, a new job, a new career. Why wouldn't you be marketing that? It's crazy.
You're absolutely right. It's the culture and where you're going to work, being that we spend so much time away from our families there is just as important as what we do, right? Who we're around, what the future of that company looks like. I think the pandemic put a lot of pressure on organizations and our internal employees are going to remember how they were treated during that time.
Sure,
You
sure,
know,
sure.
what are the resources that were given? What were the accommodations that were made?
Yeah,
And if when this bubble
absolutely.
does pop, if you find that there's a lot of people deflecting from your organization, it's time to look inward. But hopefully, the real answer is what can you do right now, right? We can't change the past, but
Nope.
what can you do in your organization right now to bring everybody together and say, I don't know. And it's okay to say, I don't know. I don't know what the next 3 months, the next 6 months, the next 12 months are going to be in this unique time period that we're in. But what I do know is that I value you as an employee. I'm here
Right.
for you. And just as our industry changes, if your lifestyle has changed, if your family needs have changed, if anything in your circle has changed and you'd like to talk about it, we're here for you because we
Right.
are a family. Your needs matter. And the
Yeah.
companies that do that are going to see the loyalty. They're going to see the people stick through. And the
Oh,
ones that don't and stop listening,
there's two things that made me, as you were talking, that popped in my head. One, and I'd never heard this before, and I thought it was so brilliant, where one dealership, when they're interviewing a salesperson, one of the stages of interviewing is talking to the spouse,
wow.
to just talk to them about what they're doing, their vision, and
Love that.
also to explain the demands. Here's why we need that person working certain times, or so they are also then understand and bought in and supportive, versus
Hmm.
being someone at home who's going, well, why do you put up with this, versus they sell the vision. The other one is a few times a year the dealer takes not just the employees out, but hosts a big barbecue or picnic. He just took a bunch of like 200 employees and their families to a Atlanta Braves game and
Oh,
paid for
wow.
hot dogs and hamburgers to celebrate, to thank the spouses and the families, to say, hey, we appreciate you sort of, letting us borrow, your dad, your mom, your brother, your sister, whoever,
I
to
love that.
work here. We appreciate that. And I think that means a big thing. So let me just pivot on that, because all of what we're talking about is really trying to celebrate and make more opportunities for people. One of the organizations that you are a co-founder of is WOCAN, right? It's the Women of Color Automotive Network. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Got it. Got it. And I remember Carrie Weiss, who was a friend of mine, who talked about it as well. And I said, well, I need to talk to everybody who's part of this because I love what you're doing. So talk to me about, as you said in your bio, you are minority and woman, double minority. Yeah, that's it. And that's true. Women in automotive, just as a whole, are a small subset, which is growing, as well as minorities. So talk to me about that decision. How did that come about? And you've been doing it now for, I
A
want to say,
year.
a year. Yeah, I thought I was trying to say a year and a half. So a year. So talk to me about the feedback, why you did this, and what's the long-term goal for this?
Sure. So it was in the middle of all the polarization that was happening after George Floyd. I mean, it was a
Right.
very tough time, just period for people. And there was conversations that just couldn't be had in the dealership, right? People would talk in little circles, you'd have little cliques, there'd be whisperings, and you felt uncomfortable, right? Because everybody wanted to talk about it and nobody wanted to talk about it. And I felt like I needed to reach out to someone who could understand my own unique points of view, the frustrations and the fears that I had, the conversations that took place, because it was something that just really broke people apart,
Right.
and those of us that both my parents were military, so I have a love for my military family. I
Mhm.
respect officers, but I also understand that there needs to be oversight, right? But how do you have this conversation when everybody's so close-lipped? Because I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to offend somebody. So I reached out to my automotive girlfriends, and it was a little sad to me that one was in Colorado, one was in Philly, and one was in California. And I said, I'm in Atlanta, a city where the African American population is huge. And I work in an organization in automotive where there's another dealership 10 on one row. And yet I can't think of another African American woman sales manager that I can have a conversation about and say, how is it at your store? What's the
Right.
conversation? Are you comfortable? Do you feel awkward at all? Let's talk about it. And
Mhm.
so the fact that we knew that we had to find each other, the four of us, from so far away, made us realize that there's probably other women within the industry who were looking for that home as well, who understood the unique challenges of being a double minority and knowing that the situations that we feel are real. A lot of times people
Sure.
have a conversation and say, well, oh, I don't see color, and everything is even to me, and I see the world in gray. But guess what? Color is what makes things beautiful. It's okay. I want you to see my color. I want you to see what makes me different. I just don't want you to treat me any different because of it.
Right. Right.
And that's the conversation that needed to be had. So we started WOCAN a year ago. We knew we wanted to give a place to women could pat each other on the back, that we could be the ones nominating each other, that we could be the ones saying each other's names in rooms. Like you mentioned, Carrie Wise, we needed our allies and our partners and other people who were non-minorities just as much as we need the minorities. Because if you get a bunch of women in a room and say, how are we going to change the automotive industry? We can't do it. We
Right.
need everybody else.
Right.
So it's the group together to bring an awareness to a cause, to make people have conversations that they didn't think of and say, you know what? I need to be intentional about inclusion. I need to be deliberate about diversity, and that I need to make hires, no, not just because someone's African American or someone because they're Hispanic or Asian, but because they're the right fit. And that I at least allowed them the opportunity to interview. And I at
Sure.
least allowed them the opportunity by opening up my net wide enough that I'm going to attract them to my organization. Because sometimes they say, well, Erikka, they're not applying. And I said, well, let's look at the ads that you're running. Is it something that's going to appeal to a woman who maybe has children, or who's going to night school, or
Mhm.
who doesn't have an educational background, or all the things that create the barriers and the stumbling blocks that keep us from applying? So that's why you need to have people in place who can help you write that ad, who understand it from a different point of view that you're not going to have because you're not there. I know what a
Right.
single mom would read because I've been there. I know what
Right.
kind of ad she'd apply for. And so those are the kind of conversations that WOCAN is supposed to change. And now that we're about to hit our 1 year anniversary, we are so excited and proud. We have over 300 members now of women within the automotive industry who meet every single month to share stories. We got scholarships, we have sponsors. It's been absolutely incredible. And I appreciate even this platform to be able to talk about it.
Oh, I think it's wonderful. And to that point, you know, I've said that to dealers in terms of, again, I remember one of your previous roles was a BDC manager. And people would say for business development center. So those are the people who are for the audience. Those are people who are handling, interacting with customers, trying to set appointments, answer questions, right? They're the forefront. And people would say, well, I can't find people. And I said, well, are you looking for part-time workers? And they said, no, we only want full-time. And I would ask the question, why? I said, you're missing a whole subset of people who drop their kids off at school at 8,
Yep.
and they can work from 9 to 2.
Yep.
Or maybe they work from 4 to 9 or whatever it is, and they will kill it for you. They will knock it out of the park for you, but they can only work 30 hours. Or maybe they have to, a set schedule. Well, no, they have to work. Why? To your point earlier, why? Just because I'm not looking for fair in a certain way. If I need, I'll create another role and say, well, this is that role. If you want that role, you can
Right.
apply that role. But it allows what the pandemic allowed my company to do is win my brother over to remote workers. And now when we look for employees, there was a whole group of people who always wanted to work with my company, but said, I'm not moving to New Jersey because that was a restriction. Now it's open. So to your point is, if I go out and I say, I'm going to advertise for part-time workers, that's a whole nother subset.
Absolutely.
But the one other thing that I helped a dealer with who had that same question. And I said, I don't have the answer, because he was saying, well, we're trying to find more diversity, minorities, but we're not answering. And I said, well, all of a sudden I said, well, wait a minute, where are we advertising? Maybe you're not advertising where they look. And so I asked in a clubhouse room that was focused on diversity. I said, hi, you got to help me. I'm brain dead here. Is there some other, and boy, they were like, well, you should be at this school. You should be on this job board, this way. And I said, thank you. And I think that, to your point, is always saying, I don't know. But going to look for the answer instead of just going, well, I don't know, go find it. And all of a sudden, once they started posting on those job boards, they got those opportunities. Now, whether they hired them or not was immaterial. The fact is, all of a sudden, they were having the interviews, and the people who were coming in for the interviews said, wow, I never had this opportunity. And that's what I think. Only people only want an opportunity, get in a room, get in front of you, and then let the chips fall.
Absolutely. And your leadership has to represent that as well, because if you're saying I'm going to bring all these people in, let's just say it's women or minorities or whatever, and you don't have a leadership team that can speak to that culture, right? Then what happens? Right? Then there becomes another disconnect, because there's a misunderstanding between things that are going on, because you have a dealer mindset that says, well, we do things this way and it is the way it is because it's always been that way, and someone who doesn't understand that world at all. So you have to have those middlemen who can understand both sides. Like, hey, this is a business and we have things that have to be handled, but these are also real people who have talent, who, as you said, need to just be developed. And if you could take the person like me with the GED who was working at a daycare before I got into automotive and turn me into a 40 under 40 in the country in 2021, all because someone was willing to give me an opportunity, then what are we doing, right? Someone says, hey, Erikka, how can I hire someone like you? And I'm like, it had to be built. You got to go back to 20 years ago when I was just a struggling student, because if you wouldn't hire her, then there's no way you can hire me.
Boy,
They're the same
whoa,
person.
whoa, 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 whoa. Just stop on that one. I hope you all heard what Erikka just said. Exactly that. I want the finished product. I want Erikka to walk in as Erikka is right now. Why? Because it's going to save me time, versus saying, no, let's roll the tape back. Would you hire this? And that actually might be a good thing for you one time for WOCAN, for like conversations or a webinar, to actually have your picture of when you were that age and saying, okay, let me just read this job description or let me read this applicant. Okay. An applicant applied, 20 something years old, GED, single parent, no experience. Would you hire that person? And see what people say. And they said, well, I'm not sure I'd take a chance. Then you missed out on me.
Yeah.
Right. That, I think, is the real gut punch, because to your point, we look for finished products because we don't have a career path, because we don't have the right training process, because we're not thinking it's our job to develop raw talent into it. We're all looking for shortcuts, the finish. and they don't think of all the problems they have when you bring somebody in who has bad habits from someone else and all that versus I'd love to be able to just build up my own, or like you were saying early on, have my own bench
Right.
that I can go build. But folks, listen, that's the problem. We're all looking. We all love to have a room full of Erikkas. But guess what? That took 20 years and a lot of work on everybody's part, hers and the people who were leading her and pushing her and prodding her or not, where she had to move to find that path. Don't go sleep on these. You don't look for perfection. Look for talent, look for desire, look for work ethic. Those are the things you can't teach, and you need those. And sometimes people just need, to your point, is a hand up and an opportunity, and they will deliver for you hands down.
Glenn, one of my favorite quotes is from one of my mentors who says, "You can't teach hunger, you can only feed it." Right?
Mm,
And when we're hiring people, we tend to hire people that look like or feel like us. Because sometimes someone can say, "I see potential in him because he reminds me of me." Right? Well, this young single mom may not remind you of you, so you don't
right.
relate. But that's why you have to hire someone in that can relate and see themselves in that person, who's willing to put the time and energy and effort because they can see themselves in there and the potential. And men sometimes are hired on the future capabilities, where women are sometimes hired on what they've had experience. Well, what's your experience? Well, what do you already know how to do? We
Right.
have to give them the same opportunity by saying, "I see something in you," and that's the hunger. It's not where you worked or what school you went to or your education or your skin tone. What I see is the hunger. And if
Right.
you're hungry enough, I will coach, train, and lead everything else out of you.
I think, and that's a good place, for leaders listening. Again, there's a lot of great things here, but that idea of when you remind me of me, it's either that means a lot of times you look like me. Let's just call it what it
It
is.
is.
Number two is I'm looking at the wrong thing, meaning I don't care who it is. If you're hungry, if you've had to overcome struggles, right? That's a commonality. I don't care what color you are, what race, what age, everybody, if you really look back and say, like, there was a time in my life I was broke, like broke, eating macaroni, broke, going to happy hour and paying for the cheapest beer so I could eat all the food there, or working in a restaurant so I had one meal a day at least, like that broke.
Right.
And even there's people worse than that. But I understood that mentality of we got to figure this out and we got to figure something out. And all you needed was somebody to guide you and say, here's your opportunity. That's what we got to be looking for. You know, I always had one of my mentors always used to say, I was in a position to oversee a team and we were talking about performance reviews and I just didn't like this person. We just did not mesh. And I said, they don't get it. And he took his hand and he covered up their name. And he said, look at those numbers. Tell me if, and I knew where he was going and I hated him for it. And I said, yeah. He goes, good, give them the raise. I said, but he goes, no, all those other things, fix those, hold them accountable to those, but let's not confuse things. So same
Right.
thing, if you cover up the picture and you say, here's someone who is this, has this hunger, has this drive, would you hire them? Yes or no? If you take your hand off the picture, in my world, it shouldn't really matter, because what you're really looking for is that drive, is that hunger. A lot of times polish, or what you think is polish, they're just selling you. And then 2 months, 3 months down the road, you're getting rid of them anyway.
Yep.
Versus, I just would rather have somebody who's coming in who wants to listen, who wants to learn, who wants to be coached, who wants to be developed, who will do the things that we need to do. Give me a room full of those people. That was the one gentleman said it way back. He said, I'd rather have someone with 75% skills and 100% heart than 100% skills and 75% heart.
I love that. Yes, Glenn, that resonated with me, that story with your boss, with cover the name and cover the picture. I remember going to an interview once where the dealer principal was so excited to bring me on. We interviewed, he flew me out. He's like, just gave me the job offer basically on the spot, said you can start tomorrow. And then he calls me the next day and he says, "I can't hire you." And I was confused. I said, "Tell me what's changed? This was 24 hours." He said, "My sales manager said that they couldn't work for a woman." Straight up told me. Now I'm glad now in retrospect he told me, because I wouldn't have wanted to work for someone who figured out some other way to kind of connivingly tell me that, he didn't want to hire me. But what I needed in that moment, and I realized why he would not be a good fit for a leader, is because even if his sales managers felt that way, I need your support, right? You're the
Sure.
VP, you're the dealer principal, you're the leader. You believe in me because you saw something that they couldn't. All they saw was me walk through the showroom on an interview and said, is she going to be the new GSM here? I wouldn't work for her. They're crazy, right? Yeah,
Well,
they
then
have bias.
leave, then leave. But see, the problem is, I'd say that I've had conversations with owners of businesses who said, I can't get my people to do this. And I said, last time I checked, your name's on the building. Like,
Well, they
so
don't
if
want
you're
the disruption. It's uncomfortable. But here's
right.
the thing, right? Instead of just leave, let's bring them into the conversation so they can understand
Sure.
that I'm not just this picture of whatever you have your bias in your mind of what you think this leadership is going to look like. Because I promise you, if we could sit down and talk, I could change your mindset or your
Sure.
employees' mindset if given the opportunity. But I realized that your limited thinking was so scared to disrupt the apple cart at your dealership in fear that the people below would leave if you hired me, that you couldn't even take a chance on the
Right.
leadership to say, trust me, I've never led you wrong before this. Let me bring her in. Let me show you what she has to offer and then have my back, right? Because I'm going to work harder and more
Absolutely.
passionate and anything else by knowing you have my back. But when you don't, and that's usually the problem, is why it starts to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then those very people who said, I told you not to hire her, look, she's not doing this. She's not,
Right.
look at her. She can't even get anybody to do anything. Why? Because you've never had my back. You really
Right.
didn't support me like you needed to. And therefore, I end up doing the very thing that they said I was going to do anyway.
Right. And I think that that's sort of a great way to sort of wind this conversation up. I could talk to you for hours, but it's this idea of, if you are the leader and you're bringing in somebody or making changes, you have to explain it to your team. You can't just say, well, they won't. That's broad brushstrokes don't work. But if
Right.
you see the talent, you have to say, we're bringing someone in and we will get past any prejudices, or we will through work, through results, through working side by side. But if you're just going to say, well, she's a woman, she's a woman of color, I can't, well, then you have problems. You have bigger problems. Then how are you selling to people who are women?
Exactly.
Right. That just my brain hurts right there. So all right. So my goodness, this is phenomenal. I got to get you back on here too, but we don't want to go too long here. So as we wrap up, I usually ask a few random questions that have nothing to do about anything, but it gives
Okay.
us a chance to know a little more about you. So I'm just don't overthink them.
All right.
So first question is, what's your favorite cheat meal? The thing that you just say, ooh, that's my favorite thing to have.
Crab legs. I'm a
Oh.
California girl. I was born and raised in a military base in California. You get me some good old snow crab legs with some butter sauce with garlic, and it's over.
You're
I
good.
can't.
All right. Favorite cartoon as a kid?
Favorite cartoon as a kid? Probably Tom and Jerry. I have no idea why. There was no words. When I look at it now, I'm like, they didn't even talk. But something was fascinating about the cat and the mouse chase.
That's the whole career is cat and mouse. A movie that you always, or a TV show that you always stop and watch when you run across it.
Hmm. One of my favorite movies is The Apocalypse. And it was a story of just resiliency and getting
Hmm.
to the moon and sacrifice.
Yep.
That really resonates with me. Um, Plus, what's the lead actor's name? I love him. I can't remember his name. Bruce Willis.
Oh yeah. I
Bruce
know which one.
Willis,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
is one of my favorite. I can watch any Bruce Willis. So anytime Bruce Willis is on TV, I'm
We're
stopping the show.
stopping. Okay. So what are you reading or listening to right now that you're really loving that you would recommend to people?
So I'm reading this amazing book called The Eye of the Storm, and it's IEYE. And the reason the book is so good, it's a little bit spiritual, but regardless of your spiritual background, what it tells you is that nothing bad is happening to you, it's happening through you. And that you have to let every adversity, every no, every headache be a launch backwards for the launch forward, right? It's supposed to teach you something. And if you can look at the obstacles that you're facing in your life, the pain points, the frustrations, the layoffs, the cutbacks, the money that you're not getting, and say, what am I supposed to learn from this opportunity? Then you start to appreciate life because you realize that every bad thing is all for the greater good. You know, that every obstacle that I had in life, that even having my daughter young, not getting my education, it's all for the story that I get to tell right now with you, Glenn. And when you look at life that way, then you really believe that nothing bad can happen to you.
I love that. I love that. Is there a motto or something that you live by, like something that you just say that's sort of my creed?
I wouldn't say it's a motto. It's a picture of my family. I have a
Okay.
picture of my family on my debit card, of course, on my desk. Every time I swipe it for something, I want to remind myself of the why. Why do I put in
Love
the
that.
hours? Why do I work? It's not for the money. It's for the freedom that I get to be able to take care and do for them. And it's for the legacy that I want to be able to create so that they can have better opportunities that I did and learn from the mistakes that I made. So my family and the picture of them is my why every single day.
Love that. Love that. Okay. So now I'm going to flip it. If I sat down and I pulled your closest circle of friends and family and I asked them to describe you in one word, what would that one word be?
Passionate.
Yeah, that was probably going to be up on my list too. So,
Second would be late.
okay. Okay. We'll go with that. So, we talked about a lot of things. And again, thank you so much. This has been just so much fun. And I can feel your passion coming through this. And I hope you as listeners are hearing that as well. We talked about a lot of things, but if there was just one, if you had to pick one thing we talked about that you would hope the listeners like that's the one thing that I hope you all locked in on, what would it be?
I would say just to be careful about our judgments. Be
Mm,
careful about the biases that you have, even unconsciously, about someone or something. Open up your mind to the future. You know, that missing piece of the puzzle may be right in front of you and you didn't even know it. That person in your company who's going to change the entire business model around may already be working for you and you're
right.
out there looking for them, right? They're right there in your organization. So let's just be mindful and let's listen with open ears and open hearts and maybe even closed eyes to really see who they are on the inside and find out that the true value of people is not what they look like or where they're from, but just in being who they are.
Love that. Yeah. For me, I think the one thing that just clicked with me is we have a tendency to look at the finished product, right? Erica, who's sitting in front of me, took 20 years. Like, would you have hired Erica if she stood in front of you 20 years ago? Like, that's if that's something that just clicked with me. And I hope all of you out there understand you're not hiring finished products. You're hiring people somewhere in the journey. Maybe they're in the middle of their journey, but you have to invest in them, to craft them, to build them, to develop them, to coach them to be that Erica that you want them to be. And maybe they go past you. That's okay. But while they're with you, your job is to help develop them and build them. They're not coming finished. And I think we have a tendency to want to hire finished or hire perfect instead of development. So that's what I got out of me. So um, where can folks, because I'm hoping that a lot of people want to talk with you. I see all of a sudden you're becoming very in demand for a lot of other people to chat with as well. And that's phenomenal. I think your message, what you're saying should be out there. Where can they connect with you? Where can they learn more about WOCAN?
I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn under Erikka Tiffani Wells. WOCAN. Please visit our website. Please join as a member or an ally. It's www.wocaautonetwork.com. That's Women of Color Automotive Network. You can Google it, but please find us, email me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect. I'm, again, passionate about people and so excited, Glenn, for this opportunity. It's long overdue. I've been excited since the first time you messaged me, and I'm so glad that we'd be able to make it happen.
Yeah, I just want to thank you again. Like my goal is to really just have conversations with people and help people who build skills and find themselves, at some crossroads that they move on a little bit. And I've just been so honored that you came. I mean, this has been so much fun. You've given so much of your heart. I wish you nothing but continued success. I'm excited. I think I was talking with, I think it was Glenn Lundy the other day or someone, and I said, I've been in automotive now for about 12, 13 years. And there is a group of individuals who are in there right around your age in the 40s, be it 43, 38, that group. there's a lot of people, automotive, I'm very comforted that automotive is in good hands with people like yourself. I'm excited to see what happens over the next 10 to 20 years when you move into the real leadership positions and your voice is heard and you're encouraging that group of people who are the 20-year-olds who want to come in and they're looking at you as mentors. I think they are well to focus on you, follow you, listen to you, see what's going on, share your story. They could learn a lot from you. So thank you again for taking the time to join me today. So again, listeners, if you've made it this far, which I hope you have, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. This way you'll be notified when new episodes, we push them out every week. Please make sure you comment, let us know if there's a topic that you want to talk about. And don't forget to share, because a lot of what Erikka had, a lot of great information. There's people out there in your network that could use this conversation to let this run through their heads and listen, and it'll help them. So please don't forget to share this out. I appreciate your time. It means a lot to me that you spent some time with us today. And as always, I say at the end of every episode, you're in charge. But now Erikka gave you a few more tools to help you become better and achieve what you want in both your personal and your professional lives. Thanks so much. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode and listening in wherever you listen to your podcast. Erikka, once again, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Anything I can do for you, you just reach out and let me know.
Thank you so much, Glenn.